Hey everybody, this is Joshua with the Tendonitis Expert. And this video is about whiplash neck injury with a small side of what your doctor's not telling you about it. So as you know, you have bones and ligaments and connective tissue, and you have muscles and connective tissue. And when you get in a car accident or fall down the stairs or get punched in the head, any number of things, your head can whip from side to side, and or it can whip forward or backwards, and more than once, and multiples thereof, sideways. If your head is turned, there's a lot of variety in there is what your head can do and whip around. And what your doctor will tell you, and which is true, is that that happens, and that when that happens, that you can get small tears. So for instance, this is looking at the back of your head, and you have a big ligament that runs down the back of your spine. And you can get tears anywhere in there. And especially if your head goes sideways, you can get little damage to the joint capitals of the facet joints. And essentially, anywhere there's connective tissue, ligaments, and even muscle and tendon connections, you can get little tears. And that's somewhat problematic, because ideally, all the fibers of a strong structure go this way. And when you get some rip and tear, for instance, then, so there's the rip and tear. Get some rip and tear, and then when the body heals that, it heals it with scar tissue, which are the same fibers, but they're going in different directions. So it's not structurally as strong, and if any one of those rips off, then the body goes, hey, we're injured, and it lays down some more scar tissue fibers. And if any one of those tears off, it lays down some more scar tissue fibers. So that's how you get quote-unquote scar tissue buildup. Technically, it's the same fibers, but they lay down structurally different, so it's not structurally as strong. And that continues a pain signal to the brain that says there's a problem, so it tries to heal itself with more fibers. So that's pretty much what your doctor will tell you, and that's all accurate. But what the doctor's not telling you is the rest of the story. So when you get in a car accident, or we'll just use that as the scenario, and your head whips around, and let's say you get either some actual damage somewhere, or even if your brain just thinks there's damage, because while your brain is really brilliant in a lot of ways, in some ways it's not real smart, if you get in a traumatic situation, even if there's no actual damage, your body can respond as if there is damage. So depending on the extent of the forces at play with whatever trauma you had, you may or may not have actual damage, but what you for sure have is three factors kicking in. The first is tightness. The second is inflammation. And the third, which you probably already had, is nutritional insufficiency. So those are the three factors, tightness, inflammation, and nutritional insufficiency, that makes up the tendonitis dynamic. So when you get in a car accident, for instance, and get any amount of whiplash, well, you're going to heal any damage, technically. You're still going to have an ongoing dynamic of tightness, inflammation, and nutritional insufficiency. And each of these plays on each other make it worse. So inflammation makes tightness worse, nutritional insufficiency worse, and nutritional insufficiency makes inflammation worse, and tightness worse, etc. So that's why you can have pain 10 years later or 20 years later. Even if you felt fine, all of a sudden you look over your shoulder and then you have neck pain again. It's not new neck pain. It's just you're feeling the pain of the dynamic that's already there, i.e. the tendonitis dynamic. So looking at that again, your head whips back and forth, zoom, zoom, in any direction. You get a little bit of actual damage or no actual damage, but the body is going to tighten these muscles to guard and protect. So imagine all of these muscles right here, but now they're being told to be short and tight, short and tight, short and tight, to guard and protect. That's what the body does. It tightens things up. And imagine when this muscle, for instance, we're saying with any muscles, when it's tight, it's contracting. So it's pulling this connection that way and it's pulling this connection that way. So imagine all of these muscles in here all tightening up to guard and protect your neck. It's essentially, let's just say, it's going to shorten this. And it's going to compress all the vertebrae in your spine because it's compressing, it's crunching down and tightening down. That is part of the problem with the tightness aspect. So the tightness compresses all this. And if you have a little bit of damage in here, you're still having a little bit of compression. And you're having the scar tissue, which is constantly telling the brain there's a problem. The brain continually amps up the tightness, amps up the inflammation, and that causes more nutritional insufficiency, which helps lock your muscles tight, and inflammation eats up B6, for instance. So there's just this kind of big downward spiral over time of more pain, more tightness, more pain, more tightness. And your actual symptoms may go up and down over time, but this dynamic is always in play until you fix it. Time may fix it, but generally, for most people, they can have pain 5, 10, 20 years later because the dynamic is constantly in place. The body's always fighting, trying to be happier, but against that dynamic of tightness, inflammation, nutritional insufficiency, essentially it loses. So your body does the best it can over time, but one day you look over your shoulder quickly and you have a lot of pain again. So that is the bigger picture that doctors don't tell you about, because basically they don't know. And that accounts for a lot of why they can't actually help you, especially when you're hurting 20 years later. They generally won't attribute it to the whiplash in general, and they just don't know how to fix the tendonitis dynamic. So in short, you want to fix the tendonitis dynamic and fix your whiplash, then get rid of the tightness, get rid of the inflammation, get rid of the nutritional insufficiency, and then even these scar tissue spots won't be that big of a problem, although it certainly helps to smooth them out as well. One other little thing of a whiplash neck injury is symptoms down the arm, and often your doctors will call that carpal tunnel syndrome. And a good doctor will notice and or find out or investigate that that's coming from up at the neck. But often, far too often, this is going to be a terrible hand. That's terrible. Often they'll say, well, you have symptoms of carpal tunnel syndrome, so we're going to need to treat your wrist and or do surgery on the wrist. Clearly, I'm a massage therapist, not an artist. Anywho, so one thing you need to watch out for with whiplash, either directly after or years down the line, is if you have carpal tunnel symptoms, a lot of it might be because these muscles are tight and they're compressing down. And that basically steps on the hose of the nerve, compresses nerve signal back and forth, and ends up with carpal tunnel symptoms. So that's something to be aware of from a whiplash neck injury also. As all these muscles tighten up, they're going to compress the nerve down the arm. So something else to be aware of. If you'd like to find out more about whiplash neck injury, then visit my website, tendonitisexpert.com, and find the appropriate page.